another way that we can drop from a sympathetic adrenalized state to a parasympathetic state is doing different kinds of breathing exercises. Now there's hundreds of breathing exercises, but one way to do it is to do a 4-count breath. So inhale to the count of 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, inhale for 4, etc. So it's a square pattern.
Does it matter if you breathe through your nose or your mouth?
I like exhaling from my nose through my mouth because it relaxes my jaw, and that is part of still point. But ultimately, I don't know how much effect it has, but that's what I do.
Okay.
A lot of times when we're tense, our jaw is tight, and all we need to do to relax our whole bodies is to, like if I'm at the dentist and he's doing work, I'll relax my jaw.
Right.
My hands too. I'll relax my jaw and my hands. And then it's less painful and I'm more present. So.
And you can actually begin putting yourself into the parasympathetic response by purposely relaxing your muscle.
Absolutely.
By relaxing your muscles.
Exactly.
So having that body awareness, like a lot of us go around with our neck tense, our shoulders up, our necks tensed, our jaw clenched, even like our arms clenched, and we don't even know it. I've been a massage therapist for years, and people come and lay on my massage table and they have knots down their neck and they have TMJ and they have carpal tunnel, and then as I'm working on them, I talk to them about their body awareness, and they're just clenched all the time. And so teaching them how to on purpose several times a day, pay attention, just be aware of what's your jaw doing, what's your neck doing, what are your arms doing.
Exactly.
And then doing the one thing that I love doing is tense and release, because sometimes it's like if your body is in a state of tension all the time, that's your normal, you don't really know what relaxation is. So what you do is if you have a tight jaw, you actually clench it as hard as you can on purpose. Clench your fists, clench your jaw, clench your shoulders as hard as you can. And you can do this during the square breathing, actually. Clench it as hard as you can, and then on the exhale,
right, the Chinese say that's extreme yang turns to yin. So if we're tight, we make it more tight, and that'll make us more relaxed.
And then you can feel the difference between tight and loose, between clenched and unclenched. And so I found it very helpful if to practice the square breathing, but then while you're square breathing, you can also practice the clench and release of the muscles to retrain your body how to be relaxed.
Exactly. And another way to deal with general stress or time disease or hyperadrenal states is just to stretch the tendons. The Chinese say when you have liver qi stagnation, which is another way of describing stress or time disease, if you just stretch, doing yoga, doing any kind of stretching exercises is just really good for you. Massage, hypnosis, these are all things that'll help drop us down into a parasympathetic state.
Right.
In the mid-90s, I was a coach. I was a life coach for a few years. And in our coaching business, we had the typical client was a woman who was in her 40s, very successful and extremely unhappy. And some of our clients, within a year, we had gotten them to double their income in our coaching practice, and they were even more miserable than ever. So we stopped and reevaluated all the coaching we were doing, because we thought that what they thought they wanted was what was good for them.
Which was more money and a more successful business.
Right, and it's just they're on a hamster wheel. And within maybe 5 to 7 years, many of those women had autoimmune disorders. And I started thinking about that. I started thinking, why would all these women get these autoimmune disorders, Hashimoto's or Cushing's or multiple sclerosis or interstitial cystitis or all these things, lupus, yeah. And I realized, or I believe that it came from this chronic time disease, this chronic stress and I thought about it, I thought, well, maybe it's because as men evolved, we were better equipped physiologically to handle that kind of stress. Being hunters and having to, hunt down large things and kill them, and be involved in wars. Maybe our body was better adapted to that, because I would watch men and they wouldn't get autoimmune disorders. They would just kind of keel over from a heart attack.
Heart attack and die, right, exactly.
But the women would get these autoimmune disorders. And so I started noticing that, and that was when I started connecting women's health to adrenal stress and seeing what a strong correlation there was in that.
Right. Right. And that's probably most of the people who are watching this video right now
Yeah.
are the women who are experiencing health problems because of their high
Right.
stress load.
Right. So later on we're going to talk more about possible solutions to this, and all these things overlap. But one thing that I used to say to my clients is, you can have it all, but you can't have it all at once.
Right.
You have to do one thing at a time, and to try and do everything at once and be a superwoman or a superman is crazy. It's madness. And it will destroy your quality of life.
It will. And actually, I was just, one of my clients I was talking to yesterday, we were talking about her having adrenal fatigue because she's been stressed, in this hyper-adrenalized state for so long, and she's having a hard time waking up and getting out of bed. She has muscle problems, she has digestion problems,
Yeah.
she's gaining weight around her middle, and she was talking to me, we were talking about how she needs to just completely change her environment, like how much she's doing and how much she's sleeping and how many things she's committing to and how fast she's going.
Right.
And she said to me, like, okay, but I'm in this place of scarcity. I'm afraid that if I don't do all these things, if I don't work enough, that I'm not going to have enough money, and I'm
Right.
just, right? And if I don't, have enough social relationships, I'll be alone. And so she was talking to me about her scarcity, and what I said to her is like, if you're going to be in a scarcity mindset about anything, what I want you to be in a scarcity mindset about is your health.
Relaxation, right?
Your health, right?
Right.
If you don't do something about this and do something about it soon, you're going to end up with an autoimmune disease. And once you're there, quality of life goes down really fast, and it's hard to turn it around. Where you're at right now with adrenal fatigue, it's
Right.
going to be relatively easy to turn it around and to heal your body. If you get MS or lupus, it's not impossible to turn it around, but it's going to be much more difficult. So if you're going to insist on being in scarcity about something, please be in scarcity about your health.
Yeah, and my observation is it takes about 10 years before the autoimmune disorders start appearing. So, but yeah, start now.
Yeah.
Another thing that I would see in my coaching clients is they all had very similar psyches. They all had a mental pattern where their self-esteem came from being able to go into a situation where a corporation was in the red and everything is hell, and they would go in and they would straighten it out, and within 6 months or a year, that corporation would be in the black and running, and all their self-esteem came from
Being a fixer.
being a fixer and ignoring the signals that their bodies were giving them. Because they know if they just push through, then they'll get the attention and that they're craving, and then the self-esteem would increase. The problem is there's a price to be paid for that.
There is. Let's talk a little bit about body wisdom, like your body's innate wisdom to tell you where you're at and what you need as far as health is concerned.
Yeah, we're not trained. Nobody trains us to listen to our bodies or to notice what the sensations are when we're feeling emotions. But body wisdom is huge. Body wisdom is really critical if we're going to navigate, especially my belief is this point in our history as a species. That's the next step for us. The reclamation of the body is the reclamation of the earth. They're no different between them. So, yeah.
So how can women who are fixers, whether they're fixing their kids or their families or their companies or the world, whatever, how can women who are in that hyperadrenalized state, who are fixers, how can they start tapping into their body wisdom? Because you said earlier that it's when we start ignoring the body wisdom, saying like, oh, I'm tired, but I have to do this thing, or I don't feel good, but I can just like ignore that so I can handle this.
Right.
What are some steps we can take to actually start tapping into that body wisdom?
Well, one thing that I'll do sometimes with my patients is I'll have them buy a watch, one of those old watches from the drugstore that beeps every hour. And every hour, I would have them do an exercise, and it just goes beep beep, then it goes on. I know people don't use watches anymore, but maybe you could set your phone
Cell
for
phone
that.
or something, yeah.
Yeah, so every hour you get a little beep beep, and then you just, what am I feeling in my body? Or every hour, I relax my jaw and my shoulders. Or every hour I notice what I'm thinking, positive thought or negative thought, just paying attention, no judgment, just noticing. So I think that's one way of bringing us back into our body, back into the present, is with little reminders. Or some friends of mine, every time they touch a doorknob, they'll take a breath. for that, and they go on with their lives.
like it.
Little cues.
Yeah, and this I've learned to do something that's a little more advanced than that, but I found that
Okay.
it helps me really become aware of what I'm doing and become responsible for what I'm doing. So when I'm in a place where, let's say, there's a job that needs to be done and my body's telling me like, oh, I'm not feeling so good, or I need to rest, but I'm not at a place where I can do that. Being aware and like saying out loud, okay, I don't feel very good right now. My body's telling me that I need to go rest, or my body's telling me that I need to go eat. And right now I'm choosing not to do that.
Got it. So it
And I
becomes
know,
lucid.
right, and I know that that's negatively impacting my health. I know that by choosing not to follow my body's wisdom, I'm going to have to pay the consequences, but I'm choosing to pay the consequences so I can get this other thing done. And then I don't even change my behavior, but I'm changing my awareness
Right.
and my accountability so that when the side effects do come, right? And I'm feeling the effects of not following my body's inner wisdom, it connects the dots. So then down the road, I'm not just sick, having an autoimmune disease or having like whatever illness and being like, whatever happened, right? Like, what happened to me? I've just been doing so many good things. It really connects the dots so that you realize every time you're doing that to yourself, you realize what you're doing to your body and you're making a conscious choice.
And also, it's interesting because when we go under adrenal stress, our body creates cortisol that basically allows us to survive the adrenal stress. And in studies, when they make people stress them out by making them do math on a computer and shortening the time that they have to do that, if they teach people to reframe their stress as power, their cortisol levels don't increase.
Oh, so what does that look like? How would that sound?
So, well, it's just what you were just saying. And I don't think that's a good long-term solution. You don't
Right.
want to reframe all your stress as power. But if you have to get something done, and that you feel that, first of all, you're feeling your body. You're not ignoring it. You're feeling the stress in your body, and you're saying, okay, this is power. I'm going to use this power, but then I'm going to take care of myself afterwards. So that'll both keep the cortisol levels down, and you have to fulfill your promise to rest later. And that creates the sane sine wave of life, of a healthy life, where we're busy, relaxed, busy, relaxed. We're not just busy, 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 right?
Right.
That sine wave of life is crucial. I think it's it's what we deserve as human beings.
And
It's our
that's the way our
birthright.
body was designed to function.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's what makes us sick when we don't
why we have day and
accommodate
night,
the way
right.
that our body was designed to function.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I would love to talk about a situation that I went through myself that I know many of the viewers are going through at this time. Now, I found myself in a place where I had been a victim of domestic violence and I had to get myself and my daughter out of that situation really quickly. I didn't have an education. I didn't really have any job skills that I could go out and work. So I knew that to get myself in a better place and to get my daughter in a better place, to keep us safe, like this was a survival.
Right.
This was a situation of survival. I had to get an education, I had to get a job to pay rent, and I had to take care of my daughter, and I had to learn how to be in a different life space so that I didn't keep getting myself into abusive relationships. So that's a lot of things to put on a plate.
Right.
And so I found that as I was in school, my body wouldn't feel good. I'd feel sick, I'd feel tired, I'd feel exhausted, I wouldn't be getting enough sleep. But I knew I had this big job ahead of me that had to get done for the purpose of survival. And so what I did was I just started shutting down my body
Right.
and not listening to it. So if I was in pain, I was like, I can't deal with that right now. I have a job to do. And I would push the pain down and I would ignore it. If I was hungry, if I was tired, if I was upset, if I was overwhelmed, if I was stressed, whatever the sensation was, that was something I couldn't deal with. It was actually interrupting my process of getting the thing done.
Right.
So what do you do when you're actually like, you can't, and people would tell me, well, you just need more sleep. You need to take stuff off your plate. You just need to rest. And I'm like, I can't, right? If I quit school,
Right.
I don't have an education. If I quit my job, I can't pay rent. My daughter's not going to stop needing me. She's a little
Right.
kid, right? And so, and the only way I know is, like an abusive environment. I need to learn a different environment so that I can have a different life. So none of those things was really negotiable. So
Right.
what do you do? Because we were talking about super women who are just like this all the time and not, up and down. What do you do when you're a woman or a person who is up like this all the time, but it's because you need to survive?
Well, if there's things we have to do, that we know we're going to have to do anyway. One solution is to reframe the way we view those things, and we can reframe it by noticing what's happening in our body. We don't suppress the pain; we feel it, but we keep going. So we still allow the signals through, but we keep going. Or we reframe it. This is a totally different situation, but when I was in acupuncture school, we were coming up for our exams, and this is 4 years of work, and you either pass or you fail. I made a choice. I wasn't going to be stressed about the exam. So, I mean, that's not the same as your situation, but
Right.
it's similar idea.
How did you do that? How did you
I just
not
made a
be
decision.
stressed
I'm
about
not.
the
And,
exam?
well, I think what happened was, and I did the same amount of work, but we can't control our thoughts, but we can always control our focus.
Okay.
So by shifting my focus from what if I fail, what if I fail, what if I fail, to this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to put the same amount of hours in, but I'm going to notice my body and relax as I'm doing it. That makes a huge difference.
Okay.
So stuff we have to do to survive, but the way we relate to what we have to do can be different.
Okay. And also knowing that sometimes the sine wave of life you were talking about, right?
Right.
I've found that sometimes the sine wave is like quick up and down, and sometimes it's longer ups and downs. And so the cycle I was in was, I needed to finish school and I needed to raise a kid and I needed to do all that. My sine wave ended up just being longer.
Right.
So if there's anything you can do to shorten the sine wave, that's going to benefit you. And if not, at least having the mindset of the sine wave. So knowing that you can't sustain busy, 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 busy all the time, that you need some downtime, even if it's not for a few years, right?
Yeah.
And being able to take those breaks while you're in the stress. So if I would have known the things like
Right. The jaw.
the jaw dropping, the square breathing, and
Yeah.
those sorts of things, then I could have incorporated, and the body sensation, if I would have known how to not block out all my body sensations and ignore them, I think the outcome would have been a lot different.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.